Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Blake? What? Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here. Welcome back, everyone, for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. And I guess what? So what? It's 9:45, 9:49 right now. This is SPTV late night edition. We get down and dirty. We get spicy and saucy. And that's pretty much a good description for the video that we're going to do tonight. Guys, the saga between attorney Brian Kent and ex-Scientologist Valeska Paris is finally come to an end, folks. Finally come to an end. I don't know how it took 2.5 years for this saga to come to an end. And the timing is unbelievably surprising and kind of coincidental. I did a video about this just yesterday. I did a video about how the attorney Brian Kent, Valeska Paris saga scandal has harmed Scientology litigation, including the Jane Doe versus David Miscavige, Gavin Potter litigation, and how Scientology used this saga to kind of force Jane Doe, in that case, into being deposed about whether attorney Brian Kent had ever asked her to delete text messages or to delete evidence or destroy evidence. Now, why would anyone wonder? Why would anyone wonder if Brian Kent had ever asked any of his other clients to ever destroy any evidence or delete any text messages? Because when Valeska Paris issued a complaint against Brian Kent to the bar, she said that he had asked her to do this. And at the end of the complaint, it just randomly said, and we believe he did this to other clients. No specifics, no details, totally unfounded. And that piece of the complaint to the bar was then used by Scientology as a weapon against others litigating against Scientology. Now, here's what's interesting. First of all, I won't bury the lead. Brian Kent has been suspended by the Pennsylvania bar for 1 year. After that, he'll be on probation for 2 years. Nowhere in the entire investigation and disciplinary report by the Pennsylvania bar is there even a single mention of Brian Kent ever asking anyone to delete text messages or evidence. Not only any of his other clients, but not even Valeska Paris, just for the record. Okay, so I'm going to share with you the report. I'm going to share with you the findings. I'm going to share with you, because I find it particularly fascinating, what the Pennsylvania bar said were the aggravating factors and the mitigating factors. Also, it's interesting that at first glance, this seems like maybe a bit of a slap on the wrist. I think people were expecting Brian Kent to be disbarred. And one of the things I found interesting is that this report gives a bunch of other examples of other attorneys who have done much worse, who have received the same punishment. So it's kind of interesting that from the Pennsylvania bar's perspective, this isn't even a slap on the wrist. This is kind of normal. They kind of go on at length about how much remorse Brian Kent has shown, and they give a ton of details about this. We won't go into all those details. But how did we get here? And if I seem like I get a little bit of a chip on my shoulder during this video as I talk about this, that is because I 100% absolutely do. Okay, I absolutely do. In this whole issue, Brian Kent demonstrated unethical, immoral behavior, bad judgment, breach of fiduciary duty, and all that is true. And Brian Kent is paying the price. But I am not going to pull any punches. Valeska Paris pursued Brian Kent. Valeska Paris is someone who has a pattern of behavior of pursuing married men. I'm not judging, but in this case, it caused meaningful harm to Scientology litigation for a period of years. And her actions and her behavior and how she dealt with it has caused other people suing Scientology to suffer. And, even before any of this litigation happened and any of this stuff, Valeska had already cheated on her husband with a whole bunch of men. Not judging, I couldn't care less. Okay. But that's a pattern of behavior. And then Brian Kent comes onto the scene and he starts representing a bunch of ex-Scientologists, including Danny Masterson's victims in their lawsuit against Danny Masterson and David Miscavige. Okay. Then Valeska comes along and starts jumping into Brian Kent's DMs on Instagram and sort of worms her way into this attorney-client relationship and then sexual relationship with Brian Kent, completely compromising all litigation against Scientology that Brian Kent was involved with. So if I seem a little sour and I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, I most certainly do. Okay. So not only did Valeska Perez come along and ethically compromise the attorney who was representing Danny Masterson's victims, okay, and then as a married woman at that time, pursued a sexual relationship with a married man who was also an attorney, who was also representing other ex-Scientologists, not just her. It's not, Valeska's actions didn't just affect her case. It affected other people's cases. Okay, so she comes along on the scene, once again goes after a married man, except this person has a fiduciary and ethical responsibility to a bunch of other ex-Scientologists who are not her. Okay. Fast forward, Brian Kent realizes he done messed up. He tries to end the relationship. She loses it. She freaks out. Eventually, she says, I can't represent you anymore. Okay, she loses it. She freaks out. She goes and gets another attorney, files a complaint against Brian Kent with the bar. 2.5 years later, here we are. Please make no mistake. Brian Kent, in his capacity as an attorney in this case, is 100% completely responsible for himself and everything that he did. But this is not a story with one side, okay? And then fast forward. Valeska gets involved in a TV show that's being produced by Brian Seymour for Netflix. And what does she do? She pursues another sexual relationship with an executive producer on that show who is not an available single man. And then has the audacity to tell Brian Seymour she will only participate in this show if he refuses to involve any of Danny Masterson's victims. Because they're just rich, spoiled Scientologists who had one bad thing happen to them one time. And their trauma doesn't compare at all to a true second-generation Scientologist like herself. So if it seems like I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder as I do this video, I most certainly do. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, because this is not going to be the end of the story as far as me explaining to all of you out there exactly how much destruction has been wrought in this community with very real world consequences by this individual. So if you think I got a chip on my shoulder, I most definitely do. Okay, let's get to the report. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania Office of Disciplinary Counsel, Brian Kent. Order. Oh, by the way, I have to give credit where credit is due. Jeffrey Augustine, Scientology Money Project. I do not know how you got your hands on this document the minute it was published late last night, but congratulations, sir. I had no idea. So I did a video yesterday about Brian Kent and Valeska Perez. Literally 2 hours later, this final disciplinary report came out on Brian Kent after 2.5 years. Unbelievable timing, and a good one on that, Jeff. Okay. Now, on this 23rd day of May 2025, upon consideration of the recommendation of the 3-member panel of the Disciplinary Board, the joint petition in support of discipline on consent is granted. Brian Kent is suspended on consent from the bar of this Commonwealth for a period of 3 years, with 1 year to be served. The remaining suspension period is stayed, and he is placed on probation for 2 years, subject to the following conditions. 1, respondent shall undergo counseling throughout the 3-year period of his suspension on at least a monthly basis or as prescribed by his mental health professional. 2, respondent shall cooperate with the directions of the mental health care professional supervising his treatment. 3, respondent shall file quarterly written reports with the board prothonatory, never heard that word before, which shall reflect his continued compliance with these conditions and shall attach reports from his mental health care professional verifying the above counseling and treatment. And 4, respondent shall not commit any violations of the rules of professional conduct or rules of disciplinary enforcement. Respondent shall comply with the provisions of ... and pay costs to the disciplinary board pursuant to ... All right, let me see if there's anything else there. No, that's the end of the document. My understanding is that Brian Kent has actually kind of smartly put together a consulting business that has kind of nothing to, I mean, he's already earning a living in a non-attorney capacity in some consulting business that he's formed with his brother. So I guess we could expect him to have gotten his ducks in a row and not just sat around for another 2 years waiting to find out what the Pennsylvania bar was going to do. Now, I know I want to show you this section about aggravating factors and mitigating factors. I'm just wondering if there's anything in this section here that's worth going into. No, this just gives his whole history. Okay, so we are going to jump forward to, the other thing I want to address. There's one particular blogger with an agenda and an axe to grind who keeps dishonestly representing Valeska's complaint that was submitted to the bar as a confidential report. I've said this before, and it bears repeating right now. That is a falsehood. It is a deliberate falsehood. Okay. The report to the bar is not confidential. The investigation by the bar is confidential. Just because you cannot find the report in a public database and it's not searchable doesn't make it confidential. This dishonest blogger with an agenda and an axe to grind also continues to repeat the false assertion that the document was leaked without the consent of Valeska Paris. This is, again, completely false. Valeska Paris is, in fact, the one who leaked the document to a whole bunch of people, including journalists. Now, what Valeska would do is leak it and then say, please don't publish it. It's like, after a certain amount of time, once you've put the document, and I only say leaked because the only people who would have the document is Valeska, Valeska's attorney, and the Pennsylvania Bar Investigatory Committee. And of course, I'm assuming Brian Kent would have a copy. The investigation is confidential, not for Valeska's benefit. It's confidential for Brian Kent's benefit. It's confidential so that no random psycho can just come along and accuse an attorney of something and destroy his career without due process. Okay. Valeska had a copy of the report. She gave it to journalist Brian Seymour. She gave it to Brian Seymour's executive producer. She gave it to me. She gave it to Jenna Miscavige. She gave it to a whole bunch of other people. Eventually, someone in our community gave it intentionally to Alex on Down the Rabbit Hole News, and so it could be published. It's interesting to note that I personally am not the person who made the document public, and I am not the person who gave the document to the person who made it public, and yet the blogger with the agenda and the axe to grind continues to represent that I am. But I do want to actually be clear. I am 100% without reservation in support of the document having been made public. And I am 100% without reservation in support of the people who gave it to Alex, who made it public. It just happens to be that it wasn't me. It just happens to be that it wasn't me. But I don't care that it happened. In fact, it is good that it happened. And you guys are going to notice that in the aggravating factors. Oh, that's right. The blogger with the agenda and the axe to grind even created the impression that because Valeska's report was leaked, because it was leaked, if Brian had not basically folded and admitted to this thing and consented to this discipline, that because the report was leaked, Valeska would have had to, testify about all this. And it's like, no, Valeska would have had to testify about all of this, regardless of whether that report was leaked or not. That's part of the process. The only reason Valeska didn't have to testify is because Brian did not challenge any of this. He said, yes, I did it. I'm guilty. That's correct. No, I'm not challenging it. Do you see what I mean? It's interesting how information gets reported when it serves an agenda. And we can get into more about all that at a later time. Let's see. What else did I want to say about this? Okay, let's go to the aggravating factors. Page 22, paragraph 5. That doesn't look right. Paragraph 85. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Here we go. ODC and respondent. Now, I think respondent is Brian Kent. ODC and respondent submit that the following are aggregating factors in the case. Respondent, so Brian Kent, misused a position of trust as an advocate for victims of abuse to take advantage of a vulnerable client. B, there was substantial adverse publicity regarding respondent's conduct, which caused harm to the reputation of the bar. Those are the only two aggregating factors. those are not many aggregating factors. Okay, that's right. That's why I took a half a step back and said that the blogger had represented. He basically said that, you know, one of the reasons Brian Kent got a slap on the wrist here is just because Valeska's report was leaked, and you know, because it was leaked, if this moved forward, she was going to have to testify. And if she had testified, you know, she didn't want to do that. And so for some reason, this resulted in him getting a slap on the wrist. Not only is this not actually a slap on the wrist, but the negative articles that were written about Brian Kent after the report was made public was actually an aggravating factor in this investigation. It had nothing to do with Brian so-called getting off easy. It actually worked against him. I just thought that was interesting to note. Completely the opposite of how this has been misrepresented by a certain dishonest blogger with an agenda. Okay, now let's look at the mitigating factors. What are the things in this case that the Pennsylvania bar considered that worked in Brian's favor? A, Brian Kent has admitted engaging in misconduct and violating the charged rules of personal conduct. B, Brian is remorseful and understands that his actions warrant the imposition of discipline, as is evidenced by his agreement to enter this joint petition. C, respondent has no record of discipline since being admitted to practice law in Pennsylvania in December 2004. D, by agreeing to this joint petition, respondent has spared Valeska Paris the embarrassment, anxiety, and stress associated with testifying in a public proceeding. Brian not forcing Valeska to testify in a public proceeding is one of the things that counted in his favor. Interesting, huh? Had nothing to do with whether her report was leaked or not, or I should say made public or not. Brian Kent has proffered character evidence, including letters of support from members of his family and participants in a men's counseling group of which he is a member, as well as letters and emails from former clients thanking him for his representation. Respondent has also provided evidence of his civic involvement, including, and then it goes through a bunch of things here, which is actually a separate section. Super interesting. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. I saw a question in the live chat. Well, actually, I'll wait until I go through the starred comments. But let me just double check my notes here. We covered that. That is good. We covered that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's look at the starred comments and we'll wrap this up. It's a little late anyway. Constance June, I am so glad Brian got punished. We don't have to hear any more about this story coming out and Brian not getting punished. Nikki Neverin, it's midday here in Melbourne, Australia. Haha, to the midday edition. That is right. Okay, I get it. Constance June, what the Does litigation was first and then the Valeska case. How did I miss that detail? The Does litigation was first and then Valeska's case. How did I miss that detail? I don't think that's a detail I've ever specifically mentioned before. The types of conversations I've had about the Brian Kent scandal up until now didn't really require getting into that type of detail. And it only really became crystal clear to me this evening as I was preparing for this, because one of the things I've mentioned in the past is at the exact same time after Brian had already been compromised, Valeska was continuing to encourage other ex-Scientologists to sign up with Brian. I don't know that it quite truly occurred to me that the other litigation was already underway. And the truth is that if Valeska had never come onto the scene and compromised Brian, there is no reason to believe that there would have been any problem with the representation of all of these other clients. And that's just the facts as I see them. In this document, in this whole investigation, because it's a long document. I mean, it's 38 pages. There's a lot of great chronological detail because remember, I mean, the bar is really interviewing Brian in all of this. And at some point, pretty much all of the Scientology clients, ex-Scientologist clients, started having trouble getting a hold of Brian. And it's clear to me that the stress, the anxiety, the pressure, the weight of him coming to terms with the magnitude of what he had done and how seriously he had hurt his ability to properly represent these clients, much less his own career, perhaps his own marriage. You really get the sense as you read this report that Brian started to unravel a bit and come unglued. And, you know, he's an adult. He was the fiduciary. He was the professional. He is responsible for himself. But if you read the report, I believe you will come away with an understanding that it does take two to tango. And there were many instances where Brian tried to end this and Valeska wouldn't let him. Now, we can make arguments on all sides of this all day long. But Brian is not the only one who caused damage here. And up until this point, well, for the last 20 years, Brian has been a highly effective attorney and litigator. And there is no reason to believe he was not qualified and suited and capable of taking on the lawsuits he had agreed to take on until a certain someone came along and decided she just had to be in a relationship with another married man. Not relieving Brian Kent of any of his professional responsibilities. Okay, let's see here. Julia O'Connell, she doesn't have her priorities straight. This has real world consequences for your actions. I feel this awful for all who had lawsuits against Scientology. Constance June, I agree. Two things can be true. She can be a victim while also having caused consequence for everyone else's litigation. Lachlan, are there any factional fights within Scientology? Like, are there hardliners and moderates? How secure is the leadership, David's hold on the church? There are no factions in Scientology. It's just like North Korea. As soon as you seem like you might be a part of a faction, you're done. All right. Escaping the cultiverse A, Valeska was paying attention while in the cult on how to throw people under the bus. I wonder if she's still under the thumb of the cult, perhaps, or is she just naturally evil? It's a very interesting question. I do believe you're going to hear a lot more information about all of this. I'm going to leave it at that for right now. Thank you, Gabrielle. Julia, Valeska's priorities are not straight. The Jane Does need justice for everything Danny Masterson did to them. Dave's Deep Dives, unrelated, but when YouTube gets their heads out of their butts and game nights make their triumphant return, will you also try to get Sterling to come? I miss that guy. You are great too. Dave, I kind of doubt it. Tom, how can we permanently shut down Scientology for good? Well, Tom, the good news here is that every single day we are slowly making progress in shutting down Scientology for good by making sure nobody in the right mind joins this cult, by doing everything we can to put enough information out there so that when members of the cult start to question and they stumble onto the YouTubes, that there's plenty of people out there having honest and frank discussions about Scientology, many of whom they probably know and used to respect. And, you know, just putting as much information out there to make the path out of Scientology as easy as possible. The truth is David Miscavige is doing a wonderful job permanently shutting down this cult by making sure the cult continues to shrink. And we are just enjoying speeding the process along any little way that we can. All right, guys, that is it. It's getting late. There was like 3 more videos I wanted to do today. By tomorrow, I'm sure there'll be 6. I'm trying to get done as much as I can. Stay tuned tomorrow. So much more to come. Have a great night, everyone.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.